Let me start by adding my thanks to our hosts and the several Aspen Institutes for convening such a great set of discussions, including our next fantastic panel. I've been invited here as soon UK-Romania business will launch a report in the British Parliament on bilateral defence partnerships, and in parallel, a conference bringing together dual use and defence tech hubs from around Europe. Dual use, of course, is a term that came up several times this morning, and it's a theme that underpins this next session. Technologies often commercial in origin, with both civil and military application. I mean, here I think the direction of innovation in defence is reversed and legacy systems of procurement challenged. Those are a couple of the themes we'll consider over the next 40 minutes or so. So to our 6 panelists, they are Igor Urchev, CEO and co-founder of CyberUnit Technologies. Wherever, yeah. Lucian Fatu, President of the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Centre. Lucian. Andrei Hunyadi, Chief Business Officer at .lumen. Ionut Sas, Senior Vice President Finance at UiPath. Sophia Stoican, Partner, Leader of Government and Public Affairs Consulting Practice at EY Romania. Welcome. And finally, Alina Urs, Cybersecurity Manager of the Romanian National Cybersecurity Directorate. Hi, Alina. So we are tight on time, so hope they will forgive me for not going through their incredibly impressive biographies. You do have that information in the program. So let's crack on. I'm going to give them 3 minutes each to set out some initial thoughts on the security impacts of technology, after which I'll open a couple of questions before opening conversation to the floor. I think we'll start with Lucian to set the scene, then Alina and Igor can look at this through the specific lens of cybersecurity. Sophia will consider the public-private interface before Ionut and Andrei bring the commercial perspectives of a publicly listed company. I think by law we're obligated to say Romania's first unicorn. And of course we'll have an early stage startup as well, offering their view. So over to you, Lucian. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, David. I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm impressed. I'm always nervous to be in the room where I started my activity 30-something years ago. But now I'm representing the Euro-Atlantic Center for Resilience. We are an organization under the coordination of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we deal with resilience from a non-operational standpoint. We do concepts, we do papers, policy papers, events, training sessions in the country and abroad. Relating to today's topics, I would like to point out a few general things, and then we'll be very eager to respond to your specific questions. The first of all, would like to point out that we at the Euro-Atlantic Center look at technology from the lens of resilience. Therefore, we call our approach to resilience resilience toward emerging and disruptive technologies. We have a community of interest focusing on this. Needless to say, the emerging and disruptive technologies are innovations that cut both ways. They generate progress, they are a result of progress. At the same time, they create vulnerabilities, they create ambiguities not only between possible use, but also between actors. Smaller or larger actors can now be part of the use of emergency disruptive technologies, and that creates new challenges for societies, for people, for governments. So building resilience to EDTs, as we call them, emerging and disruptive technologies, requires foresight, adaptability, and cooperation across the borders. I would very briefly outline a few of the areas where we look at EDT's impact. The first one is obviously defense, where EDTs give asymmetric actors, as I mentioned, new capabilities and blur the distinction between peace and conflict. At the same time, EDTs do not just make existing systems faster or more precise, but they introduce entirely new dilemmas of control, ethics, and accountability. In the field of economy, we run on digital infrastructure, and at the same time, we witness vulnerabilities in the global supply chain that can ripple into financial markets, energy sectors. Societal, strategic areas, thank you, are again areas where we look at resilience and where we assess the impact of EDTs. But I'll be glad to follow up upon your fields of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucian. Alina.
Hello, everyone, and thank you. It's great being here, and thank you to all of the Aspens for organizing this event. So I'll take it from the cybersecurity angle, and cybersecurity is already dual use, if we think about it. And we at the National Cybersecurity Directorate understand how important our role as a hub between the public sector, the private sector, and academia is. And I would like to share with you today, because I know that David is very strict on time, two main ideas that I think we ought to have in mind when we think about today's topic. So one of them is supply chain security in cybersecurity, because it is very often that innovation is found in the private sector. This is a cliché, everyone knows about it. Innovation in cybersecurity, for example, can also be found very much in communities of developers that produce, for example, open source software. We've had very often partners, institutional partners in the region who have told, even national cybersecurity authorities, who have told us that because they are low on budget, they are going to try and go towards open source software, for example. But the problem that we would have with this is that everyone relies on the community, and then every member of the community thinks that maybe someone else is going to check for vulnerabilities in that software that might be very well used. And then the problem is that maybe no one does it. And when certain vulnerability is discovered and that type of software is used very much on a broad scale, you might have very costly cyber security attacks. The problem is cybersecurity is expensive, but creating secure by design products is even more expensive. I don't know if you've ever been in a meeting when a team of developers is doing their product and they realize how much time they have to invest in order to make it cyber safe. That really costs a lot of money, it costs time, and you need specialists to focus on that. So this is something that we really have to have in mind. The other topic that I would like to go to and perhaps open the discussion for Igor, with whom we have cooperated before, and we will talk about it today, is we have so much to learn from Ukraine in terms of resilience and cyber resilience. As I said, now it's my focus. This is what I've realized even this year when I was in Kiev at one of the Cybersecurity Kiev forum that Igor is co-organizing with the National Cybersecurity Authority in Ukraine. We have learned how difficult it is to actually be prepared for a war situation. And what we've discovered, thanks to our Ukrainian friends, is that there are no standards that a private company can look at and say, if I apply these standards and if I implement them in my company, I am ready for a wartime situation. And this is a huge, huge problem in the civilian side of things. This is something we should bear in mind, because if you have a war situation, then the contracts will probably not apply. Let's say you realize that you have an attack in your infrastructure and you cannot call consultants, and maybe the software companies that give you equipment are not available at the time. So what do you do? So these two things from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Alina. Thank you. So Igor, do you want to pick up on some of that perhaps and give a bit more of a practical example too?
Sure. I'll try to be on my time because I know you're the danger man. You will stop me. Basically, what I would like to say. Cyberspace is one of NATO domain adopted by NATO starting from 2016. And it's also applied Article 5 to any cybersecurity threats. And at the same time, we are still discussing on different conferences, different meetings, like the definition of what is hybrid war or what is cyber threats, where should be Article 5 applied or should not be it applied, and so on. And I have just a question, why are we so slow? At the same time, I also, 2 days ago, I was on the conference in Lviv. It was a military conference, and I met some United States veteran, very nice guy, and he told me that, okay, he went through Afghanistan, he went through Iraq, and he fought in Ukraine. And then he told me that, okay, in the United States and other countries, they still learn from these previous wars. But the new reality is that the war is now more modern and new updated. So my idea is that we should move forward a little bit faster, and we should think where we would like to be, like where we want to be in 2 years, let's say, in 2027 or 2028. If you would like to come to one, if you would like to create some new reality, if we would like to be competitive enough to the Eastern world, let's say, or to the Eastern, for us, it's like Russia, China, other countries. So we would like to be prepared well, even better than we do it now. So my suggestion is that we should not, we should be much faster. We should learn from the threats that we see right now. And Alina mentioned that we had an opportunity this year already to have training sessions for executives and technical people, Moldova, Romania, and Ukraine. It was lessons learned, but it was also a sharing experience between our countries. And our approach is like, okay, we see some new vector of attacks, we see some new threats, we see some new viruses, we take it immediately, we start to learn from these new threats. So our idea is just the world changing too fast. Every couple of months is new threats, new dangers. So let's move faster and let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Igor. Very tight to time, so much appreciated. Right, we're going to move on, I think, to Sophia, who's going to talk a little bit about maybe the public-private interface. That's where we bring dual-use technologies to life in many ways.
Yes, hello, and thank you, David, for the introduction. It's an honor for me to be here, and thank you, Aspen, for making this possible. I would like to bring forward some additional perspectives on technology adoption into defense, and not only, also in safety and resilience. And this is because, as said, some of the technologies we want to leverage most on today are not coming from traditional defense programs, but, as said, from the private market. Both from large companies as well as from medium and smaller innovative startups. And if we talk about adoption of such technologies by public buyers, that means that we need to have effective procurement systems. Now, we see a lot of funding, as discussed in the morning, being channeled on building our defense capabilities, but I think that money alone will not solve the issue, and the question is, how can we transform all these financial resources into the real tools, systems, and capabilities that we need? Now, the good news is that the major procurement frameworks in defense are evolving. We see the Federal Acquisition Regulation and the European Directive for defense procurement being significantly revised, and also very fresh news, NATO has published very, very recently a new public procurement policy for common funded projects. And what all these have in common is the fact that they really try to keep the door wider open for technology and innovation to be adopted into defense, and not only, and much quicker than it actually is happening today. And this brings me to the fact that we really need to be honest and pragmatic, and take also a look at what is happening in today's procurement in defense, and not necessarily only here. And if we do that, I guess it's easy to spot some important obstacles. One of them refers to the speed, because innovation and technology generated by civilian market is moving much faster than procurement is being run. The second obstacle refers to access. Due to high complexity of procedures, we see large companies having difficulty to cope with requirements, but this is definitely a problem for those smaller innovative startups that we want to bring on board. And third, we see a difference between our ability to prototype and our ability to scale technology. And then in all this evolving context, how can actually procurement system do a better job at linking innovation and technology ecosystems with the needs in defense? And it needs to do it very fast with agility and security. And I would say that three priorities stand out very quickly, because we might discuss about them more. First, we need to move with speed and accountability, and this means that we really need to make wider use of flexible procedures and fast-track procedures to adopt available technologies from the market today. But also, governments and public buyers need to make more use of innovation procurement in order to be able to shape and scale technologies that we'll need tomorrow. Second, we need access, as it was discussed in the morning, to trusted and resilient supply chains. And this doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean protectionism, but it means the fact that we need diversity in supply, continuity, and security. And maybe not in the least, we need skills and people, because in the light of the reforms which are being right now planned, the role of procurement officers will dramatically have to change towards resilient officers. So this is it, actually. I guess I'm on time, and I would love to exchange more ideas on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Sophia. Let's hear now, I think, from some of the developers, those who are actually building out that technology that does have a dual-use application. So, Ionut, how does UiPath look at this?
Oh, thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity. So we started as initially as an RPA company somewhere back in 2015, and one of the main goals at that moment in time was to go a bit, horizontal and be agnostic to every single industry, including defense. And one of the critical points to prove the case of our technology was also to get into defense space, because this was getting, the proper security and the proper validation from various international or national security agencies. And we have started our projects in the US. They were a bit more, let's say, open-minded in terms of adopting new technologies. But then we continued in the UK, in Asia, and lately we are also working with NATO. We started with the ambition to have, kind of like a robot for every citizen. So eventually, also with the adoption of, with the appearance, of generative AI, it seems that we need to move a bit even more faster. And at this moment in time, our platform is changing into an agentic automation platform, which means that it's a combination between virtual assistants, agents, automations, which are software algorithms, people, because we really want to have the human in the loop for the key decision making and also for the ethical consideration. And then to add what we believe from an AI perspective that is super important for our company, to add the trust layer and basically having everything from a cybersecurity and from a, let's say, security perspective engaged. While I do agree that the process for getting our technology adopted in the defense space is a bit longer, this is due to first of all, to the various, let's say, interactions with an ecosystem which is not so, let's say, open cloud ended like in a private space, but also relate a bit to have a more, let's say, discipline, education, and enhancement process at the level of the actual user within the defense institutions. So, on one hand, yes, we would like to have the speed, but on the other hand, given the criticality of the technology that will be used, either in the back operations, but now also if we are looking a bit to various other platforms, including ours, that we are going into the combat operations, this basically any, let's say, any error in the, let's say, human intervention or any error in the platform will potentially give, to fatal consequences. And therefore, I believe that this should be an exercise of co-creation in terms of the enhancement between the representative of the defense institutions, security institutions, and ourselves, and we are very happy to learn as much as possible from them. Now, what we're experiencing is that such technology like ours are bringing significant efficiencies and scale by freeing up time for high value-added activities. And basically, one of the fundamental elements and processes in the let's say back office space is related to the procurement side, where technologies can actually free up significant amounts of dollars and significant amount of time. But also, if we are looking a bit on the combat side, leaving aside, because here we have unfortunately a lot of, let's say, knowledge from the Ukrainian space. But also, if we are looking to the combat space, we need to look a bit to the entire logistics. So, assuming that you need to have, a group of soldiers in a certain point, in order to have the group of of soldiers, you need to have a truck that is able to pick up the soldiers and take them there. Technology can actually orchestrate everything. And thank you so much for this once again, and happy for the questions.
Thank you, Ionut. Thank you. Let's conclude then our formal remarks with Endre, who's doing some super interesting stuff with .lumen. I don't know how many of you have heard of .lumen, but it's there we go. Some hands have gone up. Good stuff. Well, it's doing some fabulously interesting stuff to assist the blind to see, but it's also clearly a technology that can be applied into other circumstances too, and that's maybe what Endre can
Thank
say
you, David.
about now.
Thank you for the introduction. At Lumen, we are building glasses for the blind people, and that's how we started. But what we realized is actually that the technology behind the glasses for the blind, it's applicable in so many more industries. And what we're doing actually, what's the software behind, it's what we call the pedestrian autonomous driving AI. So actually, last week, we signed a new contract of over 10 million euros with 3 other consortium members, in which we are developing humanoid robots for delivery of food. So this is only like a first step. One can imagine like what can be used for in other areas. And I would really like to highlight Sophia's point about innovation procurement. We actually, last year, we engaged with the municipality of Cluj-Napoca in an innovation procurement just to realize that actually there was no innovation procurement before. So there is a lot of work. And actually, for us, we were lucky because we got funding in order to co-design innovation procurement. But I think there is much more to learn here. And actually, maybe all these learnings to be put in some documents that can actually be shared with everybody or to make public, so it's easier for everybody to make innovation procurement. Thank you.
Very brief remarks there, so thank you for that. So I think let me start by sort of picking up on the remarks then of our last 2 speakers. We've heard a lot about dual use and the potential that it has, but we haven't really perhaps given so much consideration to the commercial case for its development. So you're dealing, I mean, and Ionut, you did touch a little bit on this, you're dealing with a whole new set of certifications. Perhaps you're diverting limited internal resources to fork the product. There's prolonged procurement cycles, there are cap table risks. Banks and others might similarly be put off by that defense overlap. So how do you weigh these risks as a business against the potential upside?
Definitely, and this is for Lumen, it's something new that we are exploring because only last year that we realized like how much potential there is in dual use, and since then we started tapping into this, and while we didn't go like full on into it, but even this year in January when we were in Las Vegas, we were awarded by the Pentagon when we participated in one of their competitions, so we even invoiced them so far. But this is really incipient R&D, so we are really at the start. But what we observe now that there is even more programs out there that support this type of R&D, such as EUDIS, such as the NATO Diana, and the STEP programs. I think a challenge for us is it's very important for us to make it clear, like make a clear separation between commercial and defense, because what we do as a product is a very social impact. So we are still trying to figure out how to put these 2 separately.
Do you think that's especially sharp for a company like .lumen, because that bringing vision to the blind is such a social impact technology where dropping bombs on people is a whole different thing?
Exactly, and that's what we're trying to figure out. This is still something that we receive lots of recommendations, but we are still in a process in understanding how we can do this in a way that makes sense for both sides.
Sure. Anything you'd like to add, Jan?
I would say that entirely because you are referring a bit to the, let's say, to the level of investment and how you are penetrating into the defense sector. I would say that indeed it's a longer cycle, but on the other hand, we should have also the benefits, because in the moment when you are able to penetrate, you are actually a certified technology by the respective security agency, and basically the level of professional loyalty and the level of technology loyalty towards your product is there. And then basically you are also able to, because the way that we are operating at this moment in time, we are customers, we are also getting new ideas on our product, because it's a domain that is extremely specialized, especially if in a let's say in a peace time, in a war time, then definitely the innovation is the constraint factor. But this information is not available to our software engineers. So therefore, we really need, let's say, the business knowledge, the defense knowledge of the professionals. And therefore, I do believe that this is a truly a co-creation in terms of updating and enhancing your technology platform.
Thank you.
I met like some of the best ideas we actually got from people that were from the defense sector, and like just like speaking at them at conferences, we will realize like how we can adapt the technology, for example, for high stress situations, because when a bomb explodes, the visual and the auditive feelings like sensors are the ones that go away, and then you will remain only with the sensory. So basically what we can do with the haptic feedbacks is actually to, in high stress situations, to lead soldiers out and actually save lives. And another idea that we also got while speaking about potential uses is with what we do with the humanoid robots of delivering food that actually can be developed in actually augmenting unmanned vehicles, no matter what it is. It's a tank, it's a helicopter, and so forth.
Thank you. So Sophia, you were talking about it, and Lumen, of course, both have experience here. Procurement processes are one part of the problem, but I think it's also bureaucratic culture generally, issues around personal accountability. You don't get fired for buying IBM, as they used to say. There's also the secrecy that inevitably attaches to national security and sort of letting innovators into that tent. What does a broader kind of reform require of institutions? And that also goes for defense primes who can kill innovation when they work with startups. I've seen a number of instances of that myself. So what does that broader sort of reform look like that can be more friendly to startups and SMEs?
So, David, thank you for this question. I think it's a very important one, especially in the light of the reforms we are seeing for the major public procurement frameworks in defense. Because I think that a significant change in culture is actually one of the things that these reforms are trying to really push, and it's one of the things that would really make a difference. Because too often we see procurement just as a, as an administrative process. We need to tick some boxes, make sure that we are not making a mistake. But this is actually creating distance between public buyers and governments and the private market. So then if instead governments and public buyers will be more opened, if large primes would take on board small innovative companies to build up their ecosystems, I think that things will change significantly. Although this is a soft power, it will change dramatically the traditional approach to procurement, which is very conservatory right now.
Any other thoughts from the panel on that, from their own experience with their organizations?
From our Ukrainian experience, I can say that it's really depends on the, let's say, situation, the framework that we have overall. Like, let's say, peacetime/wartime is two different situations, and when to having dual use and technology in the peacetime or in the wartime is two completely different stories. And what we see from our experience that it would be like brilliantly good to have some simple way to just switch from the civil technology to military technology. As we know that just a couple of hundreds kilometers from here there is war is ongoing, and here we see like that we can feel the war, like it smells like war, not the war, but in Europe already it's Shaheds flying and hybrid attacks are ongoing, so on. So it's better to have this in mind, how can this technology can be switched in the very simple way, because when the war started, it just like one day in the morning it starts. So definitely people should know what they should do and how they can respond.
Thank you. So I do have a couple of other questions, but I think maybe I can open it up to the floor at this point. Who has got something they are keen to ask? Let's get some hands up. Anyone? Okay. So I will move on with one of my further questions. Oh, there we go. One at the front. Let me come toward you with my microphone. Can you say who you are and wait?
Denis Voltovits, Aspen Kyiv. So my question, I have two questions actually. One question is quite simple. So to your knowledge or to your understanding, if we will take the scale from 1 to 10, 1 is not protected at all, and 10 we are totally protected in cyberspace. So what is your estimation, so to say? And another question is, it was mentioned already today that probably we are coming to a war where autonomous agents or autonomous vehicles will fight each other, you know. So how far we are from that situation?
Jump in on that cybersecurity point.
I can jump in on that cybersecurity point. The first thing that I had in mind when I heard your question was, well, it depends very much on who you are to say how protected you are. I mean, we are here in the building of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There are institutions in a state that will always be a prime target. So for them, thinking that they're safe is just, I don't know, a dream, let's say, and it is really not the case in reality. Otherwise, us as a national cybersecurity authority, obviously our awareness-raising efforts go towards each citizen and and telling them that, you know, you could be a victim if you don't take all of the measures. So I think it really exactly depends on who you are. And it's very important to be able to do a risk assessment as an institution and as an individual and answer that question. And actually, this is one of the things that we very much focus on when we interact with different organizations both in the public and the private sector. Because what we realized is that very often if you ask people, you know, how do you perceive your, like, did you do a risk assessment in terms of cybersecurity and the cyber resilience of your organization? It is very often that we find that they don't necessarily think about that unless they have to. Unless they're an organization who is forced by the law to do that, they might ignore it or they might confuse things. They might confuse risks with I don't know, other types of measures that they can take. We've seen that there needs to be a lot of awareness raising on this issue. So thank you for the question, and really my recommendation to all of you here is do take some time to evaluate your own risk in cyberspace. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, and for autonomous vehicles, I can only tell you the perspective of the contract that we signed. So based on that contract, for humanoid robots that will deliver food, the first prototypes will be in cities in 3 years.
I can add, if allowed, just a bit from purely a software perspective, because while the technology, if we are looking a bit to the Gen AI, maybe is there, you really need to have a bit of the process orchestration in the back end, the automations there. There is a very recent study issued by MIT that 95% of the use cases that have been created only with the Gen AI in terms of making something autonomous were failing because they were lacking a process standardization and a process automation in the backend and orchestration. So basically, up to the moment when maybe the technology will be there, there is a significant work to be done in order to streamline the entire processes. I'm looking a bit, and also then you need to teach and to learn. I mean, the machine will learn eventually because it's learning extremely fast. But if I'm looking a bit to Gen AI or to AI, it's kind of like the brain in a human body. The brain in itself cannot operate without the skeleton. And basically the skeleton is the processes and the automations around.
Qian.
Just a quick one. I would like to second the position that cybersecurity and in general information security is something that has to do with society, that has to do with each individual. And I'll give you the example. We have our institutional partners, and our center has its institutional partners, like the National Directorate for Cybersecurity. We have worked with the Ministry of Education on developing critical thinking, but lately we have been approached by the Ministry of Culture because it is understood that lifelong learning, lifelong education has also to continue after you end up your studies. So it is a lifelong experience.
And just a short remark from my side for the question number one. So how protected we are? Unfortunately, the internet was created by physicists like 50 years ago, something like this, not with focus on security. So it's not secured enough by default. So that's why it's not possible to be secured for 10. Like, I don't know any person or any system in the world that would be secured for 10, because every day new threats and new viruses happening. So that's why it's not, unfortunately, right now, but maybe in future with AI and supercomputers we will do it.
Thank you. So I think we had another question for any other questions while I am in front of you? No, let's go.
Thank you. My name is Tomasz Pospisil from the mission of the Czech Republic to the EU in Brussels. Alina, you mentioned the open source developers. I recently heard about a situation, I wonder if this is on your radar, that especially with the 3D printers, for instance, they share the designs between themselves, they learn from each other on these open source platforms, which, however, have some of the servers in China, with the consequences of the designs being stolen at best and then patented in China. Is this something on your radar?
Ghost guns is also a fun subject, but...
This particular incident actually is not, but this is something that we have to have in mind all the time, and I'm going to take advantage of this question and take it actually to a bit of another area. It is always very important to be aware of the information that you are sharing online, where you store it, to whom you send it, what do you use in order to send it, and so on. This can sound extremely, I don't know, like an extra responsibility for people who do not want this responsibility, and it sounds overwhelming, that perhaps they're just a researcher and they have to pay attention to all of these things, and maybe they don't have another department that can help them, who knows. But it's always extremely important to be aware. Like in today's era, it's important to be aware what information you put on, if you use a public AI. If you use ChatGPT, you must be aware of the information that you put on it and make sure that it's nothing related to your organization that could be traced back to it and that your organization doesn't want to make it public. This, for example, is something that many organizations should be aware of, but not all of them have the budget to have their own AI, let's say, hosted on-prem or in cloud, but in their own infrastructure. This is very important. And because I just mentioned cloud, again, there is a joke that a cloud is just someone else's computer. So also when we put things in the cloud, we must also think about all of the supply chain risks that come associated with that. So in the end, this case that you just told us about can actually, it scales. You know, we should have it in mind that it can happen, and it happens in many different situations with different types of technology. So we need to be extremely aware, and organizations need to be aware and train their employees as to what they do with the information that they are managing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alina. So I'm going to have one final question, because I think we're coming to an end. And this is probably a overly difficult question to end on. So dual-use technologies are something that bubble up from below, from the commercial sector. Is self-regulation a viable approach in the development of frontier technologies, something industry-led rather than government-imposed? How does technology regulation work in a world where the US, Europe, China, and Russia each understand this differently? And how do we regulate without killing that innovation? Nice and simple question to end. Who wants to pick up on that?
I mean, unfortunately, we are in a, let's say, in a situation that is not at a society level, globally, not a perfect situation, to be very polite. I believe that, again, co-creation between the two parties will make it happen. And projects like, say, for 𝐼RM 2030 or other projects that are, financed by, in the US by the Department of War, if it's called like this in this moment in time, this can be the starting point. But definitely it's a journey, and it's a learning curve that we all need to face.
So if you mentioned regulation, I just need to jump in on this. Regulation is also something that needs to be co-created. For example, this year when the Directorate transposed the NIS2 directive, I would dare say it was co-created with all of the other actors in the Romanian cybersecurity ecosystem. There were numerous meetings with the private sector, there were numerous meetings with other public institutions in order to co-create this regulation, because regulations are not bad per se, even though if you're from the private sector, you might think, oh, this is just hindering me. It is actually there to help us all to be safe. So if you make sure and you make it as a process where you take everyone's perspective into consideration, it is bound to help us all in being more resilient as a society. Thank you.
And I can definitely agree with Alina. And what I like to call it is like a co-design. I think this will help a lot, just like to have the perspective also of the private sector. But what I'm seeing now as like a movement, maybe that will help with regulation, is the 28th regime by the European Commission, but that's only for the EU.
Any further thoughts? Igor?
Yeah, just some, I think that like when the European Union was created, it was a union around coal and steel. So it was like the highest valued goods at those time. And now technology is something that can get us together around technology. So my idea is that regulation definitely should be, and it's also a matter of supply chain and other important topics, but inside of some unions around technologies, it should be less regulated. Because, for example, right now, Ukraine cannot apply even for NATO Diana program, because we are not a part of NATO, but still we would like to share this experience. So I think that some new unions should be like exist. So that's why, and inside of these unions can be less regulated, so we can share experience and work together.
Thank you. Any final thoughts from you, Sofia or Lucian?
I just fully agree with Alina. We work quite a bit with the European Commission on adoption of different regulation, and we see the value added in the consultation process. So I think this is really the key to strike the right balance between too much and too little regulation to protect us and the societies. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think regulation can be viable and sustainable if it includes all the stakeholders. The important thing is to bring people around the table. This is one of the missions of our center. We look at the resilience from a desilocizing prospect, because everyone is building their own contingency plans, but when you put them all together, you get solutions and you get the right regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucian. So I think that's going to wrap us up for this panel. Just remains for me to thank our 6 speakers: Igor Rashaf, Lucian Fatu, Andrei Hunyadi, Ionut Sas, Sofia Stoican, and Alina Urs. So thank you all.